Here we go. So, I have a cold going into this, which creates two problems. One is, I'll tend to cough without any advance notice. I don't have a cough button hotkey, so there might be audible coughs. The second is, my voice is going to sound a little funny. So, my voice is just going to sound funny. It's just the way it's going to have to go. The Old Bailey. This place always makes me feel strange. I seem to get chills down my spine and break out in a nervous sweat all at the same time. Well, I didn't think I'd be back here so soon. That's my line. Good morning! Good morning, Mr. Natsume. It was only 2 days ago that I was declared not guilty here. Yes, we somehow managed to prove we didn't stab Miss Green in the back. But now this. Another morning, another murder. And here I am again in this hellhole. Can't keep coming to court. I'm beginning to think he's right. It really does seem as though he's cursed. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm afraid I have bad news. Oh. Mr. Natsume, good morning. Yes, morning. So here we are again. By the way, I occasionally have to sip something, so there's going to be some awkward pauses when I take a sip. Yes, again. Judicial Assistant Miss Miko Toba, Esquiress, what is the bad news? Oh dear, you heard, did you? If you come in shouting at the top of your voice, people can't help hearing what you say. Oh, I'm sorry. You've done nothing wrong, Miss Usato. Now what is it? Well, it seems that the prosecution in today's trial will be led by Lord Bartok Van Zykes. So, a trial that we conveniently glossed over when listing how many times we've faced Van Zykes at the end of the previous game. I guess the language was kind of clever, so you could get away with it. Van Zykes? Oh no. Well, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So-called Reaper of the Bailey, the most legendary prosecutor in the land. Oh, this is the first time we have Van Zykes in this game. Okay, that's why it gives you this introduction to him. In the trial 2 days ago, he pursued Soseki-san and I relentlessly. Of course, by the skin of our teeth, we managed to pull through, but still. Perhaps Mr. Natsume's acquittal in the last trial wasn't the end of the matter, after all. Yes, I know what you're thinking. The legend of the Reaper that says, nothing can save a person in the dock when Lord Van Zykes is the prosecutor. Oh no. That even is that person is found not guilty, the accused will meet a mysterious end one way or another. And we've experienced it firsthand. A man who we successfully defended met the most terrifying end after his acquittal, right here in the Old Bailey. And the melody in this background music is the most, common, action melody ever. I'm saying the melody, not the chord structure, because I don't know the chord structure. I just know, the top line. Do I have to put up with those ice-cold eyes boring into my soul again? Cursed by evil spirits and now by the Reaper? Pair of petrifying perils, potentially. Well, if it's potentially, at least you appear to have hope, Mr. Natsume. Well, he hasn't died yet. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Yes? I'm innocent. You have to believe me. No more than anyone now. You more than anyone now, but this time you are withholding information. Like these defendants, they say, you have to believe that I'm innocent, but I won't tell you why, because I won't tell you the whole story. So only thing you can really do is stand up there and go, my client is innocent, and have no evidence for that whatsoever. Don't worry, I'll be your steadfast ally every step of the way in this battle, I promise. And this promises to be a hard battle, I fear. Well, the trial is scheduled to begin shortly. We should move into the courtroom. Let's go. Oh yes, I forgot to say, I'm afraid we won't be able to make it. He won't be able to make it. Mr. Schultz, I mean. That's probably for the best. Oh. If he were here, I might be tempted to rely on his help. And that could maybe seen as a weakness. If Lord Van Zyke were to notice, he'd prey on it mercilessly. At least, that's my gut feeling. Mr. Naruhodo. You're right. Yes, you're right. Oh, well said, locum student Mr. Naruhodo, Esquire. Well said. I swear on this sword at my side and on the spirit of Kazuma that it harbors. I'll show him what a Japanese lawyer can do. I'll set you free with honor. Oh, yes. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session. I now call upon the counsels of the prosecution and defense to declare their willingness to proceed. Prosecution is ready. The defense is ready, my lord. Readiness for the trial, my learned friend, is not what the defense needs. What you need is readiness for your inevitable defeat. It's not just my imagination, it's really there. Lord Van Zyke has such an animosity towards us Japanese for some reason. It was some time ago now that he first became known as the Reaper of the Melee, I believe. These past few years he hasn't appeared in court at all. Yet now he's back in the courtroom, though for some reason, only when I'm defending. This Reaper, with his curious disdain for us Japanese, is a prosecutor shrouded in mystery. And you would think that that ties in somehow to the government's secrets. Or maybe how Van Zyke is apathetic towards them. Still, this isn't the time to be pondering that. I have to concentrate on Soseki-san's trial. Furthermore, I now call upon the 6 ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in this trial. Are you ready to fulfill your duty? Absolutely, I'm chosen very randomly. I had a feeling this Larkin wasn't innocent before. Is this the same set? I must say that I feel especially ruthless on days when my hat refuses to sit right. Oh well, I rather like how we're wearing a hat. You're wearing a hat. I think the ruthless look is very fetching, actually. I need to be somewhere at 10 o'clock. I have a very important meeting. Let's make this quick. I couldn't agree more. I need to take home 5 bob tonight, or the missus will go through the roof. Oh, the Lord shows us all the light here, and lead us flock to a righteous verdict. The British jury system is very different to our own, isn't it? It's quite extraordinary to think that the power of judgment is in the hands of 6 members of the public, and that the judge can only pass sentence when all jurors are in agreement about the defendant's guilt. 6 citizens of London chosen at random. Or at least, that's the idea. The prosecution would draw attention to the fact that the accused was on trial here but 2 days ago. Accordingly, where possible, the same jurors have been asked to return for duty today. Very well. Let us commence the trial. So the one that did not return was Miss Garrideb. Okay. Lord Van Zykes, your opening statement, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is not the intent of the prosecution to cast doubt over your past decision. However, the innocent verdict afforded to this eccentric Japanese before has had dire consequences. Did the accused repent of his wrongdoing in that affair? Far from it. Instead, he used his freedom to perpetrate a most blood-curdling crime. Namely, the attempted murder of his neighboring lodger and an innocent Englishman. To explain the circumstances of the crime, the prosecution calls its first witness to the stand. The detective responsible for investigating the scene, and the accused himself. Witnesses, your names and occupations, please. Yes, sir. Tobias Gregson, Detective, Inspector of Scotland Yard's Homicide Division. Soseki Natsume from the Empire of Japan. My government ordered me to come here as a student. Study your language and culture. Mr. Natsume. Yes, my lord, sir? I'm quite sure I'm not mistaken. That you swore an oath never to set foot in my courtroom again. I remember it as if it were yesterday. The day before, in fact, my lord, but close enough. Believe me, this is the last place I want to be. Inspector, let's hear from you first. Explain the case for the court. Right you are, sir. The incident occurred at the Garrideb household where the defendant has lodgings. In the ground floor room of the victim, Mr. William Shamspeare. The defendant had already admitted to visiting the victim on the night in question. Mr. Shamspeare collapsed in his room as a result of poisoning by Strike 9. He was found the following morning when the landlord, suspecting something was wrong, broke down the door. I don't know if that Strike 9 was supposed to be a reference or something. I mean, I know what game that came up in. It was spelled differently at the time. So it's not like I don't know what it would be a reference to, it's just really remote that it would actually be a reference to that. And it occurs late in that said game, so I don't want to, like, bring it up because it's kind of spoilers. Okay. That means, I presume, that the door to the victim's room was locked at the time of the incident. Correct, my lord. It was locked from the inside, making entry or exit for the room impossible. Although the victim, Mr. Shamspeare, lives to tell the tale. He very nearly didn't. The man was halfway to heaven when we first found him. That would be a classic rock song. I was the first officer on the scene, my lord. And I have a photographic print here that I took at the time to show how it looked. Yes, a chilling scene indeed. The man looks very much deceased. That's right, everyone present believed that's exactly what he was. We did not check the pulse. Very well, I shall accept this photographic print as evidence for the court. Now then, Mr. Natsume. Just to make sure. It's just a magnifying glass, okay. This must be the cup that Mr. Shamspeare was drinking from then. It's stained on the inside. Tea does that, I'm afraid, even green tea. Oh really? I've never noticed before. You've never noticed? Well, I never leave it in the cup long enough to leave a mark. I like to gulp it down. Drink tea while it's hot. That's the Japanese way, isn't it? Oh dear, so many people seem to have the wrong idea about our culture, and most of them are Japanese. This is the teacup from which Mr. Natsume was drinking. Yes, unlike the other one, the inside of the cup is completely clean. I suppose he must have drunk the contents before the tea had a chance to leave a mark. I always gulp it down, too. Sorry, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, if you just sip it a little by little, it goes cold. Clearly, I shall have to instruct you on the proper way to take tea. Well... Thal thinks an ace attorney, if they can be switched, they will be, so... Probably they got it backwards. I already inspected this, but... Oops. Just in case in the trial... Oh! What is it, Mr. Naruhodo? This bar of soap. When we first found it, I could have sworn there was some sort of round disc in its depression, just here, a reddish one. Yes, you're right. I remember it too. But now, the depression is completely empty. Where could the disc have gone? Okay, done with that expecting. Ah, yes. As the defendant, do you have anything to say at this juncture? They are haunted by evil spirits. Good gracious, what's haunted? My lodgings. There's been a whole series of strange happenings at my lodgings. The tenant before me died in mysterious circumstances. The woman was stabbed by no one on the street outside. My neighbor was poisoned. And me? What about me? I've nearly been killed countless times. Hello, Mr. Natsume. How? Even in that fateful night it happened. When I returned from Mr. Shamspeare's room, I lit my gas stove and climbed into bed. Before long, the stove went out. And somebody tried to kill me. You must always extinguish all fires before retiring for the night, Mr. Natsume. But it's so cold, and my runny nose would freeze. The point is, I didn't poison my neighbor. Oh, why am I being accused of this? Why is my existence so cursed? Thank you, witnesses. I believe I have a reasonably clear picture of events. Well, we didn't even say, like, when the crime happened. If I could raise one more point, my lord, one more conclusive point. Conclusive? Go on. Fortunately, the victim, Mr. Shamspeare, has regained consciousness after his ordeal, and he has named the true culprit. The poison consumed by the victim was administered in the cup of tea that he drank on the night in question. Tea, my lord, that was brought to the victim's room by the accused. The accused? Good grief. But, yes, that's the crux of this whole case. So Seki-san is innocent, then why? Why has the victim accused him? Well, Mr. Natsume, what have you to say to this accusation? That evening, yes, I did take some freshly brewed tea with me when I visited Mr. Shamspeare's room as a gift. The public water pump outside always freezes at night, so I bought bottled water especially to make it. And this is the result. Never will I touch tea again, never. The public pump was frozen, you say? That's not information we've heard before. That will do, thank you. Now, according to our laws, the defense must have the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses at least once. Therefore, I shall call upon these witnesses now for formal testimony. I presume the prosecution has no objection. Why would you ask? None whatsoever, my lord. Good. And you will give your account of events on the night in question to the court now. Yes. It's around 9 o'clock that evening when I visited my neighbor, and I took some tea with me as a gift. We had a heated literary debate over a nice, hot drink, after which I went back to my room at around 11. Ugh, my tea was completely harmless. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he? Strike 9. Takes some time to have an effect on the body. Yeah, again, is that supposed to be a reference or something? People don't keel over immediately after taking it. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands. Yep, just like Strike 9. Yes, I see. It all seems relatively straightforward. Excuse me, but that testimony does raise one rather crucial point, I think. Mr. Natsume claims his tea to have been harmless, presumably, though. The teacups have been examined for traces of the poison, haven't they? Why didn't I think of that? Well, as it happens, no. We haven't been able to. Did I hear that correctly, Inspector? Scotland Yard has failed to examine the suspect substance? How could you overlook something so important? Is that the first thing you should have done? Gee, Rinosuke. My learned friend is falsely incensed. The inspector said Scotland Yard was unable to examine the tea. Not that it was overlooked. Unable? Why? It's simple enough. There was none left. A drop. Someone must have been very thirsty indeed. With current scientific techniques, it's not possible to test for poison under such circumstances. We only need a drop, but one drop does actually have to exist, funnily enough. Lack of examination notwithstanding, it appears nothing other than the tea passed the victim's lips on the night in question. I see, thank you. The matter is clear. Cast your eyes over the jury, my learned friend. What? You would see it in their faces, I'm sure, the recognition of the accused's guilt. Your client's fate is all but sealed. In mere moments from now, you will lose, and your compatriot will be damned for all eternity. You will be banished to the land of perpetual tickling. Yeesh. He's right. I can feel all 6 of the jurors looking daggers at me. But I can't let them beat me down. I won't. Counsel for the defense, I proceed with your cross-examination. Yes, my lord. It's around 9 o'clock that evening. I will read again.
Hold it!
Were you and your neighbor good friends then? No, we weren't friends. Not at all, not at all. Never, ever. A simple no would have sufficed. Then, why did you decide to pay him a visit? Mr. Shakespeare fancies himself as having great literary knowledge. As a fellow scholar of English literature, we find much to talk about together. Come now. No No Japanese can understand the finer points of English literature. It's so, like, unnecessary. And then it's like, Van Sykes will get much goofier in this game. And on the night in question, that was the topic of conversation as well, I presume. It was the day of my last trial when I was acquitted. I just arrived back at my lodgings. I will admit though, good for English speakers, like getting all of the jokes in Shakespeare is something that doesn't happen. I mean, you could like research it, but then once you researched it, you kind of ruined the joke. When I ran into Mr. Shamspeare outside the street, that was around 6 o'clock. We exchanged one or two pleasantries, but it soon turned into a heated discussion. He was on his way out at the time, though, so I promised to visit his room that evening at 9 to continue our debate. But did I have ill intentions? No, not one, not two, not any. Not all. Never, ever. Simple no would have sufficed, I feel. Then tell the court what did happen when you visited the victim's room.
Hold it!
Literary debate about Shakespeare's works, I think you said, didn't you? Shakespeare. A very worthy topic of conversation, I must say. Yes, my lord. Romeo and Juliet, who was stronger? It was a profoundly pleasurable parley. Romeo and Juliet? That's so mainstream. Who was stronger? I know I'm going to regret asking this, but how did the debate go? Well, we both agreed that we would reach a conclusion more quickly with a reenactment. So we battled it out. In a Greco-Roman style, naturally. So the Greco-Roman style wrestled? Interesting. What? As far as I understand it, Greco-Roman style wrestling is where you're not allowed to go for the lower body. So it's like upper body only wrestling. Mr. Shakespeare had all sorts of costumes in his room for such a contest. So when you say a reenactment, you mean you were actually in costume? Both in different costumes. Like, they weren't both in the same costume. I presume. He was Romeo, I was Juliet, and after a vigorous wild tussle, I, as Juliet, came out on top. A victory I'll cherish forever. I dare not imagine the terrible scene of carnage. Fact remains that it was you who performed the tea and took it to the victim, correct? I boiled the water up in my room and made a pot to take with me. This game's rated teen, right? Okay. I heard that he was too poor to have tea himself, you see. It's true, there was no sign of any tea leaves in the man's room. I wanted to do something nice, to be friendly. So why is everyone looking at me with such suspicion? Because you got poisoned, dude. My tea was harmless, of course it was. Or do you have any basis for that statement, witness? My tea was completely harmless. He couldn't have locked the door behind me otherwise, could he?
Hold it!
They're gonna say, nope, strike 9. Act slowly. Yes, there's not a drop of tea left in the victim's room anywhere, was there? That's correct. Anyone would think the fellow had never had a pot of tea before. He must have licked it dry. Which is a pity, because one drop is all we would have needed to analyze it for poison. And you could say that you returned home to your room at 11 o'clock, Mr. Natsume. Yes, definitely. By heaven and earth, I swear it. The landlord was able to verify that, as it happens. He confirmed that the defendant went back to his room at 11 that night. And how was it that the landlord was able to attest to this? He, Said it was the lamps, I believe. The lamps. Excuse me, the lamps, Inspector. When tenants return to their rooms and start using gas, the lamps in other parts of the house flicker. Yes, Mr. Garrett seems to pay a lot of attention to the comings and goings of his tenants. Okay, I just ran out of sippy stuff. Things might get even more coffeeier. There's only one key to Mr. Shamspeare's room. I know that for certain. So he must have locked the door himself from inside his room. Having keyholes on the inside is rather antiquated. But that's not even necessary in this case. The victim had been confirmed. The victim has confirmed that to be the case, yes. So I'm right, my tea was harmless, completely harmless. Excuse me again. If you take poison, you die. Everyone knows that. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. What do you mean? Toxicology lecture incoming. Strike 9 takes some time to have an effect on the body. People don't keel over immediately after taking it.
Hold it!
So how long does it take for symptoms to appear, then? According to the coroner I was speaking to at the yard, about 30 minutes after the poison's consumed. Then the victim suffers violent convulsions, cramping, and stiffness, and eventually dies from asphyxiation. So there's a 30-minute interval between when the poison is ingested and the onset of symptoms. There seem to be a lot of different types of poison in the world, that's for sure. Oh dear, death by poisoning again. It's always so awful. 30 minutes is a long time. Certainly long enough for the victim to have locked the door behind the accused after he left. You can't deny that. And it further degrades Soseki-san's alibi. I have the medical report for the doctor who examined the victim here, my lord. It spells it out really. The accused is the only person who could have done it. Very well, the court will add this report to the court record as evidence. Oh yes, I see it here. Delayed onset of symptoms. There's probably some other unrelated tidbit in here somewhere. William Shamspeare, cause of coma, ingestion of small quantity of strike 9. Toxic effects present 30 minutes after ingestion. High likelihood of the substance having been mixed with the tea the victim was drinking, but no sample could be obtained for testing. The poisoning incident occurred at around 1:30 a.m. on the 21st of February. Assessed from the victim's pocket watch that appears to have been broken when the man collapsed after the delayed onset of symptoms. No container of the poison was found at the scene. So we gotta do that whole I went home at 11 but the poisoning happened at 1:30 thing. We gotta kind of pound that somehow. Great. The victim would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. The argument still stands.
Hold it!
The argument still stands, you say. This is what Mr. Natsume has been saying, isn't it? The pair of them drank tea together that night, so if there was poison in it, the victim wouldn't have been able to lock the door after the accused left later on. Exactly, me and my tea are innocent. Sweet and innocent, I tell you. I'm afraid, sir, that doesn't follow. You see, strike 9 is a slow-acting poison. In other words, it takes time for symptoms to appear. So you could have left the room up to 30 minutes after the victim drank the tea. As long as you did that, Mr. Shamspeare could have locked the door after you'd gone. But no! We drank the tea straight away. Did we? The battle over whether Romeo and Juliet was stronger, that came after the tea. Do you have any evidence to support that statement? My great homeland, the Empire of Japan, we have a saying. Drink tea while it's hot. Sure, a proverb will satisfy the prosecution. afraid there's no conclusive proof to support the defendant's assertion. On the contrary, there are sufficient grounds to infer his guilt in this matter. No. It's the extent of their testimony, is it? If I could voice a personal opinion, Mr. Naruhodo. Of course, go ahead. Mr. Natsume is arguing for his innocence so adamantly and so persistently. Inspector Gregson just brushes what he says aside. It's really quite infuriating. I agree. So I need to find an inconsistency in what the inspector is saying, I think. I'm afraid so. As things stand, the jurors are sure to find Mr. Natsume guilty. As they see it, what we need to focus on is the poison and the tea. Let's listen carefully to his testimony again. Yes, so it gives you a hint. Narrow it down to Gregson. Okay. So not this one. That's not Gregson. It's also not Gregson. It's not Gregson. This is Gregson. Okay. Well, I don't want to say that they killed over, but the thing is that...
Objection!
Well, that's definitely wrong. Okay. Lost health right away. Okay. This is not a good start. So the R band probably doesn't help. Book receipt. Doesn't say anything about, okay, so let's see what we have to present on. Nico would have been perfectly able to lock the door after his guest left. Okay. This has to be the thing to present. Like, it can't be any other thing. So you'd have to present on this one instead.
Objection!
Okay, that one happened to be right. The argument still stands, you say? I think not, Inspector. Come again? I think you'll find that you've overlooked a very significant chronological inconsistency here. Hey, Chrono, what? What are you on about? According to this report, the victim must have consumed the poison at around 1:30 in the morning. And yet, the defendant, Mr. Natsume, left the victim's room at 11. Ah. Yes, that's right. There's more than 2 hours of missing time there. Sorry, I knew what the right thing was, I just didn't present it on the right statement, but whatever. Because it wasn't very, clear. In other words, if there was poison in the tea that Mr. Natsume brought to the victim's room, how could the victim have fallen ill to it 2.5 full hours after the defendant left? Defense's argument is entirely reasonable. How do you respond, Lord Van Zykes? Your medical report is outdated. Please forgive the discourtesy if my mind has wandered. I was considering what cuisine would best complement the contents of my hallowed chalice this luncheon. How could it have happened, you ask? I do hate to shatter illusions, but my Japanese friend appears to be chasing a phantom idea. A phantom? Is it so hard to imagine that the victim drank his tea after the accused had left? For example, at the time... Excuse me. At the time stated in the medical report, he has said around 1:30.
Objection.
Mr. Natsume brought the tea with him to drink together with his neighbor. And in Japan, there's a well-known saying, drink tea while it's hot. Well, yeah, but this guy wasn't Japanese.
Objection!
And in my country, there is an even more apt saying. There is nothing more refreshing than cold tea. The point is, if there was such a long gap, there may be other ways to explain how the victim came to be poisoned, other possibilities. What sort of possibilities, Counsel? For example, the man could have had another visitor. Another visitor? It's a very bold assertion, my learned friend, from someone who has nothing to substantiate it. Or the victim could have taken the poison of his own volition. You suggested it may have been a suicide, Counsel.
Objection!
Mr. Shakespeare has categorically denied suicide. The idea can and must be discounted.
Objection.
But he could be lying. Is something wrong, Lord Van Sykes? I was listening to the sound of the carriage pulling up outside the courtroom. Pray forgive the discourtesy. Carriage? What carriage? It would seem that the key player in this case has just arrived. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. Poor player that struts and frets sour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Who, sir, are you? William Shakespeare, my lord. Alas, 'twas I, undone by these bitter events. I am the victim. What? See to it here. Why are you worried about that? The prosecution seeks to call this gentleman to the stand. With his testimony, my learned friends, futile resistance will be utterly crushed. You're calling him as a witness? Very well, counsel. I grant your request with interest. I'm curious to discover what the court shall hear from the victim himself. Happy am I, Shakespeare, to regale thee with my tale of woe, my lord. But I still have my own tale to tell, my own tale of worse woe. I can regale the court with the tale of my perfect innocence in perfect English. That will do, Mr. Natsume. Let the court now hear from the victim. What's he doing here? Alright, so that's Mr. Shakespeare. But who's the other man beside him? That's the Peeping Tom guy. That was also arguing with Shakespeare. Yes, I think I feel sure that we've caught a glimpse of the man before. State your names and occupations to the court, please, witness. He's a good choice for the perpetrator. That would be lame. But, I mean, sometimes this game has a lame answer, so. A writer of words so sweet, they do scent the breeze. An inventor of ideas so profound, they compose the earth. The unrivaled poet, the unmatched scribe, William Shakespeare. Were the great bard to be recalled to life anew, Lo, what a magnificent man. Good fellows, I am he who ponders such a miracle. William Shamspeare. Oh, my name's Meterman. Adrian B. Meterman. I work for the Altamont Gas Company. East End Branch Office. Oh, I remember now. It was yesterday on Briar Road. Oh yes, she's right, it's him. Flashback to the first game. Oh no, it's actually just earlier in this game, okay. What's the man doing over there? He looks like he's trying to see it too, so it's like he saw his lodgings. Something, okay, it's a flashback, I don't have to read this. Yes, we spotted him outside Mr. Garrett's house that morning. And he's a gas company employee. What does he have to do with this case? So, Mr. William Shakespeare, are you the victim in this miserable affair? You are the victim in this miserable affair, correct? Oh heaven, oh hell, do you command me to remember that sweet poison that didst cross me, it crossed my innocent lips. I subpoenaed him for the trial, with his doctor's permission, naturally. Hearing the testimony that they agreed will remove any room for doubt for the jurors' minds, I'm sure. Hold, you have only to rearrange the letters of my name to see that's me, a seraph, an angel indeed. How'd that work in Japanese? Because this was Japanese, written in Japanese initially and translated to English. I don't know. Thus be I noble of mind, sweet of nature, and verily honest of heart, as all heavenly angels be. Because there isn't a less contrived meaning in your name. No, not at all. The jurors seem to be very moved by the spin, I'm afraid. Actually taking his seraph anagram idea seriously. Thank you, witnesses, for your illuminating introductions. But my lord, what's the man next to Mr. Shakespeare doing here? The gas man, I mean. Oh, what, me? Well, now... Allow me to enlighten my learned friend. You recall, I presume, your earlier impertinence, when you suggested the victim had another visitor to his room on the night in question. And moreover, that the victim is a compulsive liar. What? No, I didn't quite say that. This young chin-stroker is here to controvert your wild claims conclusively. Is that not so, Mr. Biederman? Hang on. No, I'm just here. I hereby call your formal testimonies. You will tell the court as lucidly as possible what happened on the night in question. One may smile and be a villain. Yes, it doth pain me, but I let the truth be spoken. The truth of that wintry night, my discontent. The snow lay about. My neighbor did cometh in the evening, bearing a gift of tea. But merry bitter was his drink, and when he left, I did fall prostrate on my table. 'Twas the tea alone did pass my lips that late hour, naught else. I was outside this bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room. No one else visited his room, but that short little round-backed eastern fellow. Wait, what'd you say? You were keeping an eye on Mr. Shakespeare's room all night? That's right. Of course, the bloke's window is all but blocked up, isn't it? But there's a little gap in the bricks where you can see into the room. So I spent the night trying to keep my teeth from chattering as I peered into that. The question is, sir, why? Oh, well now, that's because he's on my list. Here's the problem. That gap did not exist until we made it. So this is another one of those cat door phenomenons, and somehow we have to show that. What a piece of work as a man. Wherefore wouldn't thou not stare in wonderment? What are you talking about? This buzzing busybody hath not parted display. I pray thee, pay him no heed. Take no more ado from his tedious words. What do you say about me? Calm yourself. This court is concerned with what happened on the night in question. Nothing more. Indeed, that is so. And as the testimony we have just heard clearly reveals, there was no one other than the accused present at the time who could have carried out this crime. Well, I believe this may be the final testimony of the trial. Now, counsel, the defense may proceed with the cross-examination. Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
To be clear, by neighbor, you are referring to the defendant, Mr. Natsume. Oh, indeed, sire. Perchance thou wouldst I call him the man from upstairs? That refers to God. At what time did the mustached Japanese visit you in your room? Our meeting was promised for the hour of 9, and lo did he come, a tender gift of fragrant tea. Details which are in accordance with the defendant's own testimony, yes? And we were embroiled in such a literary debate as history hath not seen before. By which I presume he means their discussion about who was the stronger, Romeo or Juliet. I, Shakespeare, did play the part of young Romeo, whilst my neighbor played the fair Juliet. Each of us dressed as though our characters be, to bring weight upon our merry experiment. I dare not imagine the scene. Frailty, thy name is woman. Canst thou imagine how dismayed I was? Yes, I had heard of the eastern art of jujutsu, but ne'er did I dream 'twould be a skill practiced by the comely maiden. Juliet beat Romeo up? This is not helping our case. Using Juto. I believe the court has heard enough about your earth-shattering literary debate. Perhaps you could reiterate your statement about the tea that the accused brought to your room. My liege, I am thy servant. My liege, I am thy servant. Gladly I would do thy bidding.
Hold it!
Let me stop you there. Mr. Natsume left your room at 11 o'clock, but it wasn't until 2 that the poison made you collapse. That amounts to more than 3 hours of missing time. If the defendant had really put the poison into your tea, that 3-hour window of time is something you're going to have to explain. Gladly. 'Twas an easy task. What? I did drink of the tea, not while my guest tarry, but after he took leave of me. Faith, 'twas stone cold, but at 1 hour past post-midnight, verily were my lips parched.
Objection!
That doesn't sound normal. Nay, 'tis quite ordinary, sire. After all, thou wouldn't recall our fiery debate. I made such an argument, there'd be no time for fiery tea. Romeo and Juliet again, and who was stronger? Mr. Shakespeare, in summary, allow me to confirm. Did you not come here with the intention of naming your attacker? Of course, my liege. 'Twas the stooped over of words did attempt to shuffle me off this mortal coil. We all know what that means.
Hold it!
So, you didn't have any kind of evening meal? Dinner, supper? Ah, fee on luxury, fee on gluttony. To eat thrice daily is but a waste of time. Sorry. I would that my belly were full. No more often the sun doth rise.
Well, most terrible eating habits, I must say. Night and day I do fill my hours with alert study of the great bard and playwright. His is it that there doth not be in my chamber, that bees in the costumes of mine art. That would appear to be the case, as even a rodent was found starved to death in your room. Now, I think of it, it's not just food that was conspicuously missing from the room, is it? I don't recall seeing a single player script anywhere. For I have devoured them all. You've eaten them? Every word to be written in my skull. Didst thou imagine otherwise? Right, that wasn't misleading at all. Now could you turn around, do you think? Which brings us to the conclusion that the only way the poison could have passed the victim's lips was in the tea. Ha. I was outside the bloke's window in the freezing cold all night, keeping an eye on his room.
Hold it!
But the windows of that house have been filled in. Historical artifact without a invoked window tax. Yeah, you're right there. All bricked up horribly. But as it happens, there's a little part of the brickwork at the bottom corner that's been opened up. I was looking into that gap. Yes, there were a few bricks loose, weren't there? And for some strange reason, a couple bars of soap lined on the edge outside as well. I don't like going around poking my chin in other people's business, especially on freezing cold nights. But them my orders, and that's what I keep doing, as long as there's breath in my body. This was all the theatricals today. Out of interest, Mr. Biederman, after the accused has left and returned to his own lodgings, did you see the victim leave the room at all? No, he never left. He was in that room the whole time, as far as I'm concerned. You can therefore discount the possibility of suicide. How can you be so sure of that? Police carried out a thorough investigation of the scene and found no receptacle for the poison. And since we know the victim didn't leave his room, and didn't dispose of the poison's container himself, it's clear that this was no attempted suicide. Only the culprit could have removed the receptacle. Ah, yes. Lucidly explained, Counsel, thank you. It really was. You can't argue with the logic.
Hold it!
You say a short little round-back Eastern fella, so you can't be sure it was the defendant then.
Objection!
Would have been you then? How many other short little round-back Japanese with a mustache do you think there are in London? Well, of course, it's only a narrow gap, and it was quite dark, so I didn't notice the mustache. But he showed up at around 9, so I'm pretty sure of myself. And the person you saw arrived, and he and Mr. Shamspear drank tea together. Nah, sorry. I couldn't say. Why not? Because I couldn't see into the room all that well, could I? What I did see was the silhouette of that little round-back fellow wearing a pretty dress. Then the pair of them started some kind of wrestling match. I tell you, I didn't know what to make of it. I suppose that was the Romeo and Juliet companionship battle getting underway. Mr. Biederman, allow me to confirm one final time. Apart from the accused, can you state with certainty that no one else visited the victim on the night in question? No question. Gasman's honor. My lord. Goodness me, yes, Mr. Foreman. I've kept my mouth shut and listened up till now, but this has gone on long enough. Are you all with me? Yes. Are we to understand that you ladies and gentlemen of the jury are in agreement with one another? That you've reached a unanimous decision? Too right we have. Are you all with me? Yes. Wait, no. The defense is in the middle of a cross-examination. To be honest, I was holding out a bit of hope for you, young man. Especially after you identified those few hours that followed the accused leaving the victim's room. Yes, 3 missing hours, as you put it. But in the end, what difference do they make? None as far as I can see. Since that's now apparent, there really is no reason to delay our decision any longer. Like I said before, I don't take Bob home with me tonight. The missus will blow her top. Yeah, what's that? Sorry, I didn't quite catch what you said. Very well, let the court be apprised of your decisions. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will state your leanings to the defendant's capable culpability.
Guilty!
Guilty.
Guilty!
Guilty.
Guilty! Guilty!
Guilty! All of you? Well, it would appear that the jury is indeed unanimous. So this time at least, it seems justice will be done. All's well that ends well, as they say. This calls for a toast, I feel. To the guilty being punished. Get up, Mr. Naruhodo, please. The trials isn't over yet. Oh, because they have to do it this way because they introduced the mechanic. Because it's a new game. What about the information I found in this Encyclopedia of British Law I have? That obscure right that belongs to defense in these situations. Remember? Summation examination. Yes, that's right. We don't have a jury at Japanese courts, of course. But here in British Court of Law, if we can reverse the decision of a majority of the jurors, we can force the trial to continue. This trial can't end now. Whatever it takes. I just can't let that happen. The defense moves to invoke its right to a summation examination, my lord. Why am I not surprised? As my learned Japanese friend's inability to admit defeat, you choose to cling desperately to some archaic rule you barely comprehend instead of accepting the truth. Certainly no other defense counselors in recent times has exercised the right to a summation examination. Because they all know that once the jury's mind is set, it cannot be altered. Except the last time, but whatever. It's like that rule in Monopoly where, when you sell back your houses, you just have to sell them back for only half price or something like that. Nevertheless, the right remains and must be upheld. The defense counsel's request is granted. This court will proceed with a summation examination, as outlined in the Encyclopedia of British Law. Thank you, my lord. Are you and your fellows prepared, Mr. Foreman? Believe me, my lord, we know all about this young lad's tenacity, and we're ready for it. Very well. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I hereby call upon each of you to state the grounds upon which you find the defendant guilty of the crime for which he stands accused. The victim may not be well off, but he is a noble man and straight up. There's no reason to doubt the man. Well, I do declare the good gentleman has no reason to lie. In fact, I think he's rather splendid. Just look at the accused by comparison. He's Japanese, stoops all the while, and has a mustache. Very fishy. There's no evidence to suggest the gangly actor is a fraudsman, for now, at least. Oh, I really don't care. Like, I just need this trial in quickly. 3 hours of missing time is nothing when you reach my age, you know. Nothing at all. I knew it. Every single one of them seems completely convinced, and in the most shallow way possible. It would seem that the jurors have come to the conclusion that Mr. Shakespeare is a fine, upstanding, and honest citizen. If you ask me, they've all been bewitched by his strange theatrical movements. And sadly, nothing Mr. Natsume has said appears to have registered at all. Well, here goes. Let's not forget. I've pleaded with the jury on Soseki-san's behalf before, and it worked, so you never know. Before we begin, it might be an idea for me to remind you exactly how a summation examination works, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh. Well, you're still very new to British law, after all. That's true, I suppose. And Soseki-san's fate is entirely in my hands now, too. There's always a chance I might have forgotten some crucial detail. Perhaps I should hear Susato-san out. I wonder, should I let her talk to me through it again, or not bother? No way. Thank you for your kind offer, Miss Susato. But I've been through plenty of these summation examinations already now. I think it's important that we don't delay the start any longer than necessary. Of course, I understand, and I'm quite sure you're right. If you're confused by anything at any point, you can turn to me for advice whenever you like. I'm here to help you. He is really listening carefully to each juror's statement. Finding two that are contradictory. Why are they're giving me a tutorial anyway? Just a shorter version. How about no version? Without further ado, please, counsel, proceed with the summation examination. Yes, my lord. The victim may not be well off, but he's an old man and straight up. There's no reason to doubt the man, okay?
Hold it!
Well, there are plenty of people in London who seem noble but poor. Could some of them also be liars? I've no doubt about it. Like that shaky client of yours, for example. Absolutely not. Mr. Natsume is no liar. Look, the point is, the only thing that passed the victim's lips that night was the Japanese man's tea. When you take the gas man's testimony into excuse me. You take the gas man's testimony into account as well, the truth couldn't be any clearer. Ah, well, that's alarmingly logical. But let me be frank here. I'm a gentleman with a gentleman's values. If it turns out that the old Shakespeare's chum is a rotten liar after all, Shakespearean, I'll gladly change my decision about the defendant. And I'm sure my fellow gentlemen on the jury would do the same. Isn't that right? Well, yes, perhaps. No, I don't see it happening. Yeah, what's that? Elderly gent on the end here, you know. You have to speak up. Look, I really don't care about all this nonsense. I just want this trial to be over. How many gentlemen do we actually have on the jury, then? Alright, sir. I may hold you to that. Don't forget what you said. Okay.
Hold it!
Those are not contrasting things. Are you saying you believe the man to be trustworthy because he's rather splendid? No, that's not what I said. Point is, the man is the victim here. What reason would he have to lie? And yes, he is rather splendid. Because he hates the person? So you say yet again. Meanwhile, the man who stands accused behaves so suspiciously, it's exhausting to look at him. I'm afraid he's not splendid at all. Splendid logic there, madame. Thank you so much.
Hold it!
Not one of those things is a reason to find the man guilty. But he is fishy. He is fishy, there's no point dancing around the fact. He's Japanese, he has a mustache, and he stoops. You see, you're over the conclusion in just 3 steps. 3 steps like a waltz, in fact. You know, the more I think about it, the more this trial seems like a dance. You seem to be several steps ahead of yourself, though, and you're on the wrong foot. No, there's nothing but circumstantial evidence here. There's no actual proof of the defendant's guilt. But the victim's version of events is backed up by what the big chin man next to him says, isn't it? 1, he saw a Japanese man there. 2, he saw no one else. And 3, he saw a Japanese man there. Oh. There's another 3 steps. All of this really does seem more and more like a waltz, doesn't it? Right. And the prosecution will waltz its way to victory if I let you speak much more.
Hold it!
fraudsman? What do you mean by that, madame? It really is a most tiresome problem for the company. Most irritating. We can be absolutely certain that a customer is stealing from us, but without hard evidence, we can't even threaten to excuse me. We can't even threaten to take action for fear of being sued. I'm sorry, you've lost me a little there. Who are you? I am the wife of Augustus Altamont, owner of the Altamont Gas Company. Good gracious, Altamont Gas, you say? Gas is the future of energy in this country and around the globe, but proper handling is essential. As I am sure your employee for the East End branch office would be the first to agree. Absolutely, Lady Quinby. Gotta be used properly. Altamont Gas is the best in the world, of course. I think we may have solved the mystery of the bow from earlier, Mr. Naruhodo. Right, he bounded in defense of his employer's wife, did he? Deference. Ah, so would it be right in assuming that the recent Mr. Meterman was watching what Mr. Shabspeare was up to in his room? I'm afraid that there's no end to the leaks the population of the East End will go in order to steal our gas. So I really have no choice when the company identifies somebody as a possible fraudsman, but to dispatch a worker to watch the suspect day and night. We are very thorough in our investigations. So you mean Mr. Shakespeare is... I wouldn't come out and say it in public. But you can finish that sentence with a grubby little gas thief. You have noticed a public gallery in here, have you? The eye of a man has not heard, the ear of a man has not seen. Faith, wouldn't thou wound me with thy words, were I to let them penetrate my skin. But seraphs hear not insults, only choirs of angels in song. We may not have evidence yet, but my workers won't stop buzzing around you until they find it. And when they do, you'll find yourself blasted back to your angelic heights in ultimate gas explosion. So Mr. Shakespeare has been stealing gas. I wonder, juror number 4, if you wouldn't mind adding that information to your statement. My pleasure. Was it the bit about ripping that thief apart you enjoyed? A little before the part about abject violence, but it's not too much trouble. Yes, of course. This could be it. This could shift the balance. Okay, I'm gonna have to end it here, because I don't really have the oomph to do these right now. It's kind of a mistake to start recording. And then it's kind of an awkward place too, but whatever. But I'm just out of gas. So I'm gonna save here, not because, just saving just because I'm taking a break between sessions, not because I'm low on health or anything. So goals still remain.